I thought I was going to fight Ilya in January.
I know there was a little bit of criticism about Paddy Pimblett getting this fight.
I mean, I felt just as much hate for me as I did for him. If you're an Armin fan, you obviously, feel slighted, and I understand that. But this is such a crazy game, and timing is everything. I beat Dustin Poirier, and then he ended up fighting for a belt. If you sign up for this game, you have to understand that there's so many variables that you do not control, and ultimately you just have to be ready for each one of these nights when they show up.
Justin Gaethje has fans doing double takes when he openly suggested that he might end up tapping Paddy Pimblett at UFC 324.
This is such a crazy game, you just never know. Maybe I'll sub him.
I mean, anything's possible.
Gotta be 1,000,000 to 1 odds, though.
Gaethje's boldness doesn't come from nowhere. After years of being known as the man who walks into fire with a grin, he started leaning heavily into sharpening his ground skills following his losses to two of the sport's most terrifying grapplers. His fight with Charles Oliveira left a mark not because he was out-grappled from the jump, but because he was stunned on the feet before the submission ever happened. Facing Khabib Nurmagomedov, that was its own puzzle, one so unique he still speaks of it like trying to decode an impossible riddle. Since those setbacks, he's quietly thrown himself into jiu-jitsu and wrestling training with a seriousness he'd never shown before. Even though he still intends to fight on his terms, he isn't walking into UFC 324 afraid of grappling exchanges. In fact, he welcomes them if they come, confident that nobody is taking him down clean unless they rock him first.
I mean, ultimately he's a really good grappler, but since the Charles Oliveira fight, I've really trained a lot of jiu-jitsu, a lot of grappling. And I've actually been enjoying it a lot more than I ever have. And so, I'm not looking to grapple, but I have no issue, with the grappling department. And my ability to keep people from taking me down is second to none. So he's going to have to, compromise me with his punches and kicks and knees. And then, if that happens, then he'll have a better chance.
Paddy Pimblett, meanwhile, continues being the magnet for attention that he's always been, for better or worse. He walks into this interim lightweight title fight undefeated in the UFC, but his win streak hasn't convinced everyone. Beating opponents who are either out of form or sliding down the rankings has made some fans suspicious of how quickly he's being pushed into championship territory. And yet, Pimblett believes this is exactly where he belongs. Instead of buying into the idea that he needs to rely on grappling or play it safe against someone like Gaethje, he sees an opening for a dramatic, explosive finish. He's convinced this fight ends within 3 rounds, with his hand raised after a knockout nobody ever saw coming. He wants to march straight at Gaethje, pressure him early, and flip the script on what people expect from him.
But I think everyone's going to be shocked, to be honest, because I think I'm going to knock him out. So people won't expect that. People think I'm just going to try and grapple and take him down, when I'm not. I'm going to come out and I'm going to put it on.
Expecting an early knockout, a late knockout, somewhere in the middle.
I don't see him getting past the third, just like Chandler.
Some former opponents and longtime analysts have added extra layers to the drama. Tony Ferguson, one of the few men who has shared the cage with both of them, didn't necessarily view Pimblett as the superior fighter, but he noticed something Gaethje might struggle with: emotional weight. Gaethje has already lived through the heartbreak of losing 2 title shots, and stepping back into another interim title fight feel like reopening old wounds. Pimblett, on the other hand, enters this moment with fresh energy, no emotional baggage, and the feeling of stepping into something brand new. Ferguson didn't think either man was unbeatable, but he sensed that one carried a history that might drag him down slightly, while the other walked in with excitement instead of pressure.
Paddy's not bad, dude. Paddy's not bad. He's very beatable, and Gaethje's very beatable as well. But when it goes into the passion and how upsetting Justin Gaethje has always been about not getting that real title shot, and they just keep dangling it right there again, Paddy's in for a new treat, right? Paddy's the one that's never fought for a belt. He's going in there. He's going to be trying to, get that stuff. He's going to feel a little bit more fresher. He's going to have that little bit of excitedness, in my opinion.
Din Thomas looked at the matchup with a far more tactical lens. He believed Pimblett had stumbled into what might be his one real window to touch gold in the UFC. The division is full of savages, especially rising names like Arman, Zarukian, and Ilia Topuria, and Thomas didn't see Pimblett matching up well with the most dangerous of those contenders. Gaethje, while still a powerhouse, is deeper into his career, more predictable stylistically, and far less explosive than the younger threats. That makes him a much better fit for Pimblett. Even so, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that Pimblett had a mountain to climb. He didn't think Pimblett had the ability to hold Gaethje down for long stretches, and he didn't see him surviving constant pressure and chaos over 5 rounds. In Thomas's eyes, the matchup leaned strongly toward Gaethje. The real question was how long Pimblett could stay standing before things started unraveling.
Paddy Pimblett, Justin Gaethje fighting for the interim title. Whoever wins that fight will move on to fight Ilya. And I don't think that there will be a title defense for the interim title. If I was to guess, if I was to bet, there will be no title defense of the interim title. I think that the next fight for whoever wins between Paddy and Justin, I think their next fight will be Ilia Topuria. So do not think they will defend the interim title. So good movement and clarity at 155 pounds. I feel for Arman Sarukian, but this fight's going to be incredible.
Eddie Alvarez, who delivered Gaethje his first UFC loss, took a different angle entirely. To him, this had nothing to do with talent and everything to do with preparation. Pimblett, he believed, needed an entirely different training environment if he hoped to handle what Gaethje brings. Gaethje's intensity is something that can't be simulated easily. Alvarez had felt it firsthand, the chaos, constant collision, the non-stop pressure, and he thought Pimblett needed to adapt to that for fight night. If Pimblett trained as usual, surrounded by familiar sparring partners who didn't push at Gaethje's level, then the moment he experienced that pressure in the cage, he would already be too late. Alvarez didn't doubt that Pimblett had the heart to fight hard, but adjusting to Gaethje's style on the fly is the kind of mistake that gets fighters finished early.
That night 8 years ago, what's like the first thing that comes to mind when you think of that fight with Justin?
That I'm glad it's over and I never want to do it again. I'm like, the fans don't ever ask for a rematch or anything like that, because that would have never. I'm like, I'm glad. He's unique, man, and he's one of my favorite guys to watch. So like, but if you want to beat Justin Gaethje, you have to. So he's a forward fighter and a pressure fighter that he will stand in the pocket. And he's gonna throw everything he got in that pocket. If you don't meet him, you'll get chewed up. So Paddy, the way to beat a guy who like does this, very violent, aggressive pressure fighter, you have to meet him. You have to throw when he throws. So you got to be brave, and you got to go. You have to go when he goes in between his shots. If you do that, you got a fair shot. If you don't do that, if you're not brave and courageous and throw when he throws in between his shots, it's going to be a really long night. It's going to be a hard night for you.
Matt Brown stepped in with a broader frustration about what UFC 324 represents. For him, Pimblett's sudden leap into an interim title fight felt less like reward for beating top contenders and more like promotional gamble. Brown has watched the sport evolve, and to him, this kind of matchmaking hints at a shift toward popularity outweighing earning your place. Zarukian, he argued, had done everything right, beaten stronger competition, and proven himself on the highest level, and yet here he was pushed aside, so a fighter who sells more tickets and gets more clicks jumped the line. Brown's tone grew half sarcastic as he joked that title shots might as well be handed out based on social media influence, but beneath the humor was a real concern about the sport's direction.
They're not even like, they're just basically saying Paddy's more popular, you're getting it over Arman.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, right? And that's I mean, God, I hate like how I kind of get into this too much, but I mean that's really like that's the definition of, you know, a monopoly, where a single promoter owns the title and the rankings, and it's not a good thing for the sport, in my opinion. And I have to question what it's going to do for the longevity of the sport. You know, I don't think in the short term it's really going to make a big difference, right? Like, you know, it's going to sell the next fight, right? It's going to sell the next pay-per-view. But trends tend to come and go, right? Fads tend to come and go. At some point, like, you know, to have staying power and lasting power, I think it requires, you know, a meritocracy-based system. It's going to require, you know, some, you know, if you want to bring in guys like Arman Sarukian or Movsar Evloev, I always mess up how I say his name. You know, you want to bring in these Olympic wrestling level guys. I mean, they don't want to have to go out there and put on some ridiculous show to become a champion. They don't want to have to go on Instagram and start a podcast and make you know, whatever kind of skits on social media and this silly kind of stuff. Like, they just want to be a world champion because they want to be the best athlete. And that's what makes me wonder how the staying power is going to be, right? When you're dealing with guys that are you know, legitimate athletes that want to be legitimate athletes, and they're getting passed up by guys that are entertainers.
Islam Makhachev echoed some of that sentiment, puzzled at how the UFC justified leaving Zarukian behind. From his point of view, Zarukian had done enough to sit at front of the line. He watched as Zarukian battled through injury, cut weight as a backup fighter, and dominated Dan Hooker to prove he belonged. Yet somehow, the interim title went 2 men ranked several spots below him. Makhachev couldn't understand how the fighter who deserved it most was now set up for an extended wait while Pimblett and Gaethje battled for the slot he should have had. Islam said, "The organization may not like it. They make more and more fights that I don't understand." Of course, I think Arman should have gotten the title shot. Let's be honest, Arman is not going to fight anytime soon. It's Pimblett versus Gaethje. Whoever wins, he gets a shot at Topuria, meaning 1 more year of layoff for Arman. It's tough. Dana White, however, was firm about how he viewed the situation. He didn't care about rankings, numbers, or public opinion. To him, Zarukian had missed his shot, and now he needed to earn another one. In the UFC president's eyes, it didn't matter what fans thought or what analysts argued. Zarukian simply had more work to do before being handed another chance.
I wouldn't say that he's the odd man out. You know, he had an opportunity, and you guys know how that played out, and he's gonna have to work his way back. I don't give a shit what the number says. He's gonna have to work his way back. There's just too much goes into this for those type of things to happen. You know, we had a little. We were talking back in my room tonight, and we were talking about you know, all the crazy shit that's happened over the last 20-something years. But you can't do that. You can't get the opportunity and then it can't end that way. So he's got to work his way back.
So the message is take the next fight you offer him, obviously?
No, I mean, you know, he obviously he knows what's going on. I don't give a shit what everybody else says. You know, he knows what's going on, and he's got to work his way back to that title shot.
Meanwhile, Arman Zarukian himself tried inserting his presence into the UFC 324 storyline in a different way. He even offered to help Gaethje train for Pimblett, not because he wanted Gaethje to succeed, but because he held a deep dislike for Pimblett and would gladly contribute to seeing him lose. Gaethje understood the offer for what it was, a strike at Pimblett, not a gesture toward him. He appreciated the sentiment but declined. He didn't want to risk bringing a future opponent into his training camp, nor did he feel the need to disrupt his routine with drastic changes. Gaethje trusted his team, trusted his preparation, and didn't see a good reason to mix in someone he might face down the line.
What has the last few days been like in your mind?
I mean, it's hard, you know, it's hard because it's your goal. Why, like, guy like a Paddy, he beat just one rank, number 12, and like they made the fake ranking and put him on the 5, and it's a business, you know. It's not just a sport. They can do whatever they want to do, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna be a champion. It's just time, you know, the difference of the time. It's a hard because I deserve it to fight for the title.
The stakes for Gaethje stretch beyond this single fight. If he wins, the UFC expects him to unify the belt against Ilia Topuria, but Topuria has openly talked about moving up to welterweight, which might shift everything. Gaethje didn't seem bothered by that possibility. If Topuria vacates the belt, Gaethje would become the champion outright, and that opens the door to a rematch with Max Holloway or Charles Oliveira on a massive stage, possibly even the long-rumored White House event. He has imagined that scenario since defeating Rafael Fiziev, picturing himself carrying both the lightweight belt and the BMF strap by the end of the year.
He's one entertaining. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind him adding something to the story so that people want to watch. Either way, people are going to want to watch. I'm the most consistent, most exciting guy, and this guy is on a freaking tear right now. So when that cage door locks, we're going to try to beat the shit out of each other, and I can guarantee every person in the arena will turn into an animal, and that's my goal every time.
All of this brings the attention back to the fight itself, a matchup filled with contrasting energies, motivation, and pressure. Gaethje sees himself as the man who engineers controlled collisions, stepping into exchanges with the intent to hit harder and land first. He respects the power Pimblett throws, but believes that his own timing, angles, and pressure will create the openings he needs. Pimblett, however, appears ready to shock the world, convinced he can break Gaethje down before the fight reaches the championship round. Between emotional storyline, tactical theory, questions of merit, and the wider debate about how the UFC is making decisions, Gaethje versus Pimblett has turned into one of the most layered, complicated fights of the year.